There is something I find fascinating about playing games in ways they were never intended to be played in. You take away crucial parts from the core gameplay until you reach a challenge that will either test your game knowledge or your mechanical skills limit. But these challenge runs are never about efficiency, instead they focus on playing fun. Solos in Limbus are no exception. You take away 5 of the sinners you'd normally use and limit yourself to just the one nugget you wish to torture for the next few hours. My love for solos stems from the fact that this playstyle brings something to MDs that I haven't felt since the game was released: the need to think. By the time I finish a single solo run, most people are already well on their way for their second or third regular run. But these runs aren't memorable in the slightest. You just get in, spam win rate, and avoid anything that could slow the run down. The only challenging part is selecting the YouTube video you'll want to watch or the podcast to listen to in the background. Grinding Mirror Dungeon is just simply not fun, challenging, or engaging. Soloing solves this problem for me. Needing to think because fights suddenly become hard is what I find exciting. Also, I'm masochistic, but I assure you, this has nothing to do with me enjoying the suffering that's inherent in solos. So to spread my love for this unique playstyle and bring more people in, I decided to create this terrible guide for those who are interested in voluntary flagellation, starting with a disclaimer. I'm just a guy on the internet who loves soloing and wants more people to give it a go. I'm not some great sage whose advice you should treat as law. I've only been soloing since MD4's Ritornello came out, and I still have so much more to learn. This is just my advice based on my experiences condensed into a single video. I think it's a great starting point for those new to solos, but that's it, a starting point. I want you to think for yourselves, figure out what works for you. You may disagree with me on some of my points, but that's completely fine. So with that out of the way, let's get on with the requirements. While it is possible to start soloing as soon as you unlock MD after beating Canto 2, just don't. I don't recommend attempting this until at least finishing the current Canto, but even then you'll need a lot of preparation. For starters, you need the ID you want to solo with, then the egos. It's good to have one for each tier, even better if your ID can fuel some. It's not necessarily required to have them all, but it will make your life a lot easier if you do have them though. If you're only doing normal mode, leveling can be skipped as your sinners are automatically adjusted to the starting cap. But for hard mode runs, you'll need to get them to the level cap yourself. Uptype 4 is recommended, and I'd at least get the egos to Threadspin 3 before going in. And of course, the biggest investment for a solo run, the bench IDs. These are the IDs we use exclusively for their support passives. These passives range from being absolutely useless to mandatory in every team composition, so let's start with the ones that stay locked in, regardless of who you try to solo as. For damage mitigation, we have LC Boomersault and Zweisauth Sinclair, both providing 10% damage reduction. The reason we use Zweisauth instead of West is because Zweisauth support passive activates immediately, granting the damage resistance at turn 1, while Zweiwest grants the defense level up starting at turn 2. I don't actually know which one has more damage mitigation, that would require research and being a nerd, but even if Zweiwest grants more damage resistance, the consistency of having South always active, especially at turn 1 where you only have one skill slot, is invaluable. Also, Zweishmel gives 2 defense level ups. To deal more damage, we take LCB Rodion and Think Tank Honglu for 40% more damage dealt on heads hit. Technically speaking, these two aren't fixed as negative coin IDs do exist, but we'll just ignore them for now. And lastly, probably the most important type of bench IDs, the healers. Chef Ryoshu and Barber Otis both heal you after defeating enemies. The difference between them is the amount and how many times they activate. Ryoshu heals for 15, once per turn on an enemy kill, while Otis activates twice for 10 each. Finally, depending on who you can fuel, either Chef, LCB or G-Corp Gregor. I generally prefer G-Corp only for IDs that have a counter or any clashable defensive skills, because while G-Corp Gregor does heal a whole lot more, there are times when his healing won't go off due to it requiring winning a clash. Both of the other Gregors grant guaranteed 5 hit points worth of healing at the start of every turn, even when you're staggered. It may not seem like much, but not only does it add up during the course of the run, it is also abusable by every character that has either an evade or a guard for their defensive skill. Just leave one enemy alive and defend away. I never said that this was a fun thing to do, but if this is what it takes to keep a run alive, then I'll do it. I have to mention that with the release of Parallel Superposition mode, Infinity Mirror or just simply Floor 10, healing from bench IDs become less important as you progress through the dungeon, so I usually switch to G-Corp Otis and Zwei Gregor for more survivability and made Ryushu for more poise and haste once I get past Floor 5 or 6. The rest of the bench IDs are either character dependent or aren't very good, but generally speaking, take whatever you can benefit from even if you can't fuel them, or just go for more res bonus if you need it. Speaking of, we can have up to 120 res bonus to spend for unlocks when starting a run. I'm going to list them first in order of usefulness, then go over each one separately with this 120 limit in mind. Starlight Guidance, Favor of the Nebulae, Star of the Beginning, Star Shower, Accumulating Star Cloud. Or, if you aim for floor 10, which you really shouldn't if you're watching a guide, replace Star Shower and Accumulating Star Cloud with Binary Star Shop. The choice between Guidance and Nebulae for the top pick was difficult at first until I realized the importance of speed for solos. Nebulae is great, don't get me wrong, but having more speed is just better for reducing the amounts of resets you need. If I'm doing a solo run, I try to at least get enough res bonus to take both of these. Star of the Beginning is great mainly because of the extra team pack selection and its low price. Having more options to choose from when selecting floor packs can be the determining factor on whether the run survives or dies. Star Shower doesn't need an explanation, it's just that good. As for Accumulating Star Cloud, it's mainly there because it's the final 10 points we could spend and the bonus money is always nice. You can take Binary Star Shop instead of Star Shower and Star Cloud for more money overall and the other stuff it provides, but I find front-loading money is better for runs that end at floor 5. Going for floor 10 though, Binary Star Shop easily sweeps the competition. The problem with the rest system is that they either cost too much for what they provide, or they're like Interstellar Travel, very situational. Perfected Possibility is awesome for example, but by taking both Nebu and Guidance we can take it as it costs 20 more than what we have left. You may think that going for the gifts in the same archetype your Sinners in is the correct choice, however this is only true for the Shi Association as their gift is straight up broken. By default you take 50% less damage and have your health capped to 75%. This may not sound that overpowered yet and that's because this is the unupgraded form. Leveling it up just once puts the damage reduction to 75% and your max health to 50%, which allows you to remove any and all stagger thresholds for all 3 Shi IDs. Leveling it up one final time puts the maximum health percentage to 49, meaning that both Heathcliff and Ishmael always have their health conditionals active. Dawn doesn't have a health requirement for some reason. Now for the actual best starting gift in the game, Patrolling Flashlight. Depending on the upgrade level, you get either 2, 3 or 4 charge barrier on turn end if you don't have any. Charge barrier gives shield 3 times its value while also giving the same amount of charge count. When starting a run, the most important resource you have is health, as even cheap damage can spiral into a stagger combo you can't recover from. Patrolling Flashlight reliably negates some of that cheap damage, while the charge generation allows you to use pretty much every useful charge gift in the game, as they only require charge count, which we now generate even if we aren't running a charge ID. Charge Ego gifts are probably the best keyword gifts for a solo run due to their low requirement but very impactful buffs that every sinner can benefit from. If you can select multiple starting gifts, Portable Battery Socket allows for more charge count generation with no extra conditionals. The other really good option for a starting gift is Fluorescent Lamp due to its incredible damage and speed increase if you have any sort of Rapture application either from your ID's kit or from the many Rapture gifts that apply. It's only really powerful if sustaining yourself isn't a problem, so for the sake of simplicity I'd recommend Flashlight over Lamp for most IDs, but let's say we finally have a run going, what gift should we try to go for? Ego Resource Generation. Ego is the only somewhat reliable option most IDs have for clearing regular encounters past the first few floors, not just because of the AoE that some have, but also the resistance change and on-demand corrosion. I'll talk more about these in the next few segments, but trust me, trying to finish a run without Ego is pretty much impossible for the majority of the IDs in the game. Next on the importance list is healing, especially the in-combat variety. I don't think I need to explain why healing is important, but I do have to mention that Painkillers is finally good. Getting staggered in the later parts of the dungeon where the enemies don't stop pouring in is very likely. Surviving, however, is not. Painkillers granting 3 protection and some healing helps a lot with negating death, especially on the squishier IDs. And then there are the keywordless gifts like Special Contract, Piece of Relationship, Impulse Weight, etc. Some of these are incredibly powerful and some are less than stellar, so you'll have to be the judge of that, as I can't just list all the Ego gifts in the game, as that would take hours. But I'm willing to make an exception for Carmilla, which makes regular encounters a cakewalk by either staggering the enemy's turn 1 or lowering their health enough for a single AoE Ego to stagger them instantly. Sadly, this doesn't work in focused encounters, still it's one of the best gifts in the game for solos as it allows you to go for a wider variety of floor packs. Then prioritize either more charge gifts if you have Flashlight or a different way to generate more charge count. You can also go for the chosen keyword for the run, stacking a bunch of bleed gifts does go hard. Poise is another great option, there are a bunch of poise gifts that can generate it even if your ID can't. I considered including this segment with the next part because, let's be real, even though resistances both physical and seen exist all throughout the game, you've most likely never thought about them in general play, and for those of you who speedrun railways, I'm not talking about the enemies' resistances. Each identity in the game has its own physical resistances, while each Zayn level ego determines the ID starting scene resistance. Let's take a look at She-Ishmael for this example, because everyone who completed the tutorial has her. She-Ish takes 50% less damage from slash attacks, takes 100% more damage from pierce, and takes normal amounts of blunt damage. You can only change these multipliers by getting staggered, which makes all of these numbers turn into 2x. What you can realistically change is her scene resistances. Snack Harpoon comes by default being fatal to Lost and Slot, while also enduring 25% of gloom damage taken. These multipliers don't change when you get staggered, only by using a different ego. You can replace your Zayn level ego with a different one before going into the dungeon if that character has another Zayn ego. A more common way of changing resistances is by either awakening or corroding ego, as either will instantly switch around your resistances as soon as the attack animation finishes. This is the main reason I recommend bringing in as many different egos as you can, because taking damage is often unavoidable, but you can avoid taking 4x damage by changing your resistances. Another great option you have with ego is corroding on demand. Since you don't have teammates to worry about, the indiscriminate part of the corrosion is gone. So as long as you have ample resource generation, you can overclock egos to consume more sanity, or just spam awakening more and you can corrode whenever you want. The reason this is great is because corroding overrides getting staggered. This is the simple trick to defeat Chromer's on you stagger. By not being staggered, you can clash with her attacks via the corrosion, thus further reducing the damage she could deal. Not to mention that avoiding the stagger keeps your physical resistances from turning fatal. Learning to corrode on demand is a really useful skill to have when soloing. Even better if you know how to control which ego to corrode to, thus we come to targeting. Targeting is really weird and one of the reasons this video took so long to make. Even if I had access to the game's code, I don't think I could fully figure this spaghetti out. In regular encounters, the only thing you need to know is that if any enemy has a higher speed than you, then you get hit. If your current speed is the same as on enemies, then it's a 50-50 who's going to attack first. If you're faster than everyone, then you're going to attack the slowest enemy and their skill slots first, before moving on to the second slowest and repeating this until you run out of skill slots. Except if the enemy is either staggered or uses a defensive skill. In that case you will skip attacking them to prioritize clashing first, before going in for a one-sided attack. In focused encounters, targeting is even more dumb. If you're fighting a single enemy, we can ignore speed and instead focus on the enemy's body parts. To be more precise, need to focus on where they're positioned in the enemy's skill bar. The order you'll be attacked in is right to left from the body parts and then left to right from the skills within the body parts. If your speed is higher than the enemy's, the body part with the lowest speed will always be the first thing you'll clash with, but the order you clash within a body part depends on the left to right rule. If you're slower than the enemy, then you need to target the fastest body part with the left to right rule in mind to clash before being hit. Keep in mind that if you want to evade all attacks with a single skill or get your shield up as early as possible, you will always need to target like this even if you are faster. When targeting the same slot multiple times, the skill order depends on when you've targeted that slot. AoE Ego tends to target skill slots you aren't clashing with, so you can influence its targeting by first using your other skills and then the Ego. Be mindful that when using a Seed of Light ability like Superbia, your entire skill bar resets. Speaking of Superbia, just use it. Solos are already reset heavy, and if you think that using Durante will help you progress, then do it. It's only consumed when you finish the fight, so if you die or change your mind and reset the battle, the daily sapling of light won't go on cooldown. Yes, I looked up what the wiki calls it between this and the last paragraph. I've never used fusion. Lunar memory is craftable now though, so go wild, I guess. This is going to be another short category because even though I have over 400 hours in the game, I still don't know what floor pack has which enemy exactly. So instead of pretending that I'm a great sage instructing his followers with false truths, I'm just going to tell you what I do and you can figure the rest out yourself. Dongback can't be soloed, she ignores your bullshit and kidnaps you. I always go for railways, they are free level ups and their unique gifts can be straight bangers. Same with the detour tails. Yield my flesh to claim their bones is difficult due to rules of the backstreets. Kim is manageable if you resist slash, have an evade or just a lot of damage, otherwise I wouldn't go there. And if the gift is top tier, I ignore everything I said and still go there just to suffer. Inside the packs, event nodes are what I aim for while avoiding elites as much as possible. Pekkatura are way easier than regular encounters. As for abnormality fights, if they're past the first floor, they should be relatively free. I'm talking about both the event choice and the nodes themselves. I often end run from the first event node because my dumbass thinks I can fight a teddy bear with 0 sanity, gifts or ego. Of course, there are harder abnormality fights, but my memory is that of a goldfish and this video is long enough as it is. Experiment, learn what fights you can and can't take on by attempting them. You will fail a lot of runs this way, but you need to experience the fights and their mechanics somehow. If you reach this point in the video and still aren't sold that you can do a solo run, don't worry. These IDs are easy to pick up for solos either due to their built-in sustain with self-healing and shielding, they can stack damage reduction, have incredible defense or can ignore that completely as it's kinda overrated, or has a horse. If there is one takeaway from my yapping, it's that the regular encounters are the hard part of solos due to getting staggered. Terraria Heathcliff can ignore it by summoning Dullahan, my new favorite ID Barber Otis, and at least 2 more have built-in healing with their skills. Redaz Ryoshu, DH Rodion and Zweigregel shield through everything, the Shi IDs ignore damage and K-Corp Honglu cheats life itself. Think Otis lacks damage but makes up for it by having the best evade in the game along with a really impressive staggered bar and health pool. Similarly, G-Corp Otis stacks all of her buffs on herself with no allies around. And I'm sure there are many more that I missed that can ease your way into solos. My first ever solo was made Ryoshu because of her easy conditional for AoE attacks, though I don't really recommend her for starting out because she suffers from 3 stagger thresholds with no sustain, making her quite the glass cannon. Not unlike Magic Bullet Otis, whom I thought would be an easy sinner to solo with due to her built-in insane AoE, but to get to the insane part of her AoE you need to be insane yourself, because surveying the first floor is itself a challenge. A challenge that rewards you with the most fun run I've ever had the chance of finishing. And that about does it. As always, leave your questions, nitpicks and suggestions down below. I don't claim to be the best solo guy in Limbus, these are just my experiences and recommendations for anyone new to solos. As I said, I've only been soloing since MD4's release, so there's still much for me to learn. This video was a never-ending moving goalpost. I was done with the script in early January. Then I couldn't record the voiceover for well over a month due to being ill for 3 weeks straight. Then came the news about Floor 10, and I decided to delay it until after its release to play around with it a bit to formulate an opinion. Even now I'm not exactly happy with how the video turned out, but this season's almost over and I don't want to delay releasing it any longer. Remember when I said I only have 400 hours in the game? Well, with how long this video took, it's over 500 now. In the future I'll try to keep my sights on more realistic video ideas that don't take half a year to make. And now for a little self-promo for those of you who stayed till the end of the video. In last year's final community post I said I will be streaming at least once a week, and come next week it's finally time for me to stay true to my word. I'm sure I have some infographic on the screen that goes into a bit more detail than I can currently. I'll try to keep a fixed schedule, but I also might just give up on it completely and do guerrilla streams instead. I've been Silver, see you around. Damn, I really should learn how to speak, jeez.